What's the very worst situation that you've been in?
I've been down $1 million before.
Really? Have you got any advice for people who have started a business and it's not going to plan?
It's not an easy question.
Be happy? Should somebody do what they're really good at, but they don't enjoy so much, but they're going to get good money from it? Or should they pursue something which they really enjoy, but might not make as much money?
I think the one with the money, because you can get really passionate about something if it creates a life that you love, right? It's not what you do, but how you do it. Nobody grows up and says, I want to do metal buildings when I grow up. Nobody. And then most kids don't grow up saying, I want to own real estate. Mostly people that don't know what they want to do with their life, or they're not making enough money and they see some infomercial, some guy on a beach that owns a bunch of houses. And they're like, oh, I want to do real estate. But the truth is, real estate's not always fun either. People don't want to pay rent. There's a leaking toilet. It's a job. It's not passive as people say. I think people make the mistake of believing things are passive.
Oh yeah, I mean, even I'm at a point now where if I stop putting the content out, everything would take quite a bit of a hit. So there's always work to be done.
And maybe the work goes way, way, way down, but I don't ever think it's completely passive, because you're always on a hook from a risk or a liability standpoint, particularly in construction. Construction runs like a top for me. This is my most active business of all three. It's also the smallest income of all three.
Really?
Well, yeah, of course, bro. Because we're talking about millions of dollars in the other businesses.
Yeah.
We'll do 7 figures plus, but it's not comparative to the real estate and the construction in any way.
Have you got any advice for people who maybe they've started a project, a business, and it's not going to plan, it's losing money? And I've imagined you've been in some situations before where things have got sticky and you're like, holy shit. How do you know whether you should pursue with that business or whether you should just give it up?
It's not an easy question. Understanding what model you're in is really, really important. If you're getting your ass handed to you and you're in a business that is, you eat what you kill, and it's always going to be that way, there's no return on investment of time and effort like real estate would be. So if I find a deal today, I'll buy that deal. Maybe that deal doesn't go right, but I know that if that deal would have gone right, it'd pay me the rest of my life. Then I'd probably stay in that business. So the business model, and then coupled with looking at somebody's life that's 10, 15 years ahead of you and asking you, do you want that life? That's what would make me pull the plug or stay in said business.
I realized when I look back, the times when I felt like something is missing or I felt a little bit unhappy is because I've been so involved with spending all my time with my girl that I didn't have any time to spend with the guys. You need guy time. Otherwise, you're going to feel like something is missing. And you need capable guys who you can share ideas with and talk to. And you also need some guys just to give you a bit of shit every now and then, keep you grounded.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking they need to hang out with guys and go do fantasy football and shit like that. And I don't want that in my life, because if I'm a true friend to you, I want to talk about your business. I want to talk about us making money. I want to see you be a hero for your wife, your family, your kids. I want to see you absolutely dominated. If not, I'm not really a good friend, am I? Oh, come with me and have this guiltless pleasure. Let's get shit-faced and see if we can bet on a football game we shouldn't be watching. Man, fuck that. I have no interest in that at all.
Do you have any friends who are kind of not leveled up the same way you did?
No. I want to allow them in my life. For what? Because if we're going to become the average, I like being at least around guys that are at close to where I am, or I feel like there's some value.
What if it was a childhood best friend that you grew up with in your teenage years?
I love you to death, bro. We ain't hanging out. And look, when I go back to Louisiana, I moved in the nicest neighborhood in my hometown. I have a bunch of old football and baseball teammates. Funny enough, all those guys are absolute winners. I'm so proud of every one of them. It's the most wholesome thing. I don't have friends in my life that aren't going to make me feel like I'm growing, because I do think that's a fair exchange. At least help me feel like I'm growing. If you're not growing, you're dying. Your gut, your soul knows.
Oh yeah, I had that experience. I spent the whole summer in Ibiza.
Yeah, bro.
You know what happens there.
Yeah.
And it was a point in my life where I was doing well for myself. Things were just running. They were ticking along. So regardless of what I was doing, the money was coming in. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have some fun, enjoy myself. And it was...
But it haunts you.
It was very enjoyable, but then it got very repetitive, very boring. And then I felt like, what the hell's going on? I realized the thing that was eating me up the most was that I wasn't growing. I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't meeting any new people, any interesting people. I wasn't even putting out any content. And that was like my thing.
It's hard. One of the biggest challenges, I've even faced this challenge. What do you do when you don't have to work? You die inside alive. It's not an easy thing. It sounds cool. It ain't fucking cool. Yeah. It makes you miss being broke. There's been times it didn't really matter, because whatever I did, I was still just looking at the bank account every day, and it was just going up and up and up and up. Because I built a machine, didn't feel good. It was fun, but it was also haunting me. And I even said this to a young man. It was a young war room guy. He looked up to me a lot. I let him live in my house for free for a little while. I said, the man that you see right now is a very unrealistic expectation of what it took for me to get in this position. And I hate that you see it. Don't believe this is what it looks like. And I told him that, and he kind of looked at me funny. I'm like, no, I really, really mean it. What it took for me to get in the position to be able to do what I'm doing, what you see from me is not what it took to get here.
I think a lot of people, they see the same thing when they see me. They're just like, oh, you're always at the beach.
Yeah.
You're always traveling.
Yeah.
You're always do this. I'm like, but you don't see what's going on behind the scenes. I could show you it, but you get bored pretty quick.
Yeah, it doesn't sell either, does it?
Yeah.
That's the kind of messed up thing about social media in general.
What's the very worst situation that you've been in with one of yours?
I've been down $1 million before.
Really fuck.
Bro, I was gonna lose it. I had to refinance my house. I had all my lines of credit maxed out in the construction. I owned United Rentals $250,000. I could not pay them because I was barely making my payroll. I was playing a credit card game to make payroll every week. I was owed 800 or $1 million, but I was down $1 million. I lost $1 million in a year.
How the hell did you keep going? Like, what gave you the faith to think, do you know what, it's going to be okay?
I didn't know it was going to be okay. My identity was tied to it. I would have had to admit I failed. I would have had to quit.
Ego thing then?
I don't even know if it was ego. It wasn't like a pride thing. It was like, I can't quit because I burned the boat. And I think that some people make the mistake of switching careers too early. Always kind of make a boxing analogy. Let's say you're fighting a traditional fighter and you take the jab, you eventually slip it, but you take the cross. You might take the cross twice because, you didn't get it. And then you slip, you miss the cross, right? And you take the hook and you're like, fuck this, I quit. When you go fight a southpaw, you're about to take his jab and his cross. And you switch enough times and fight a new industry, you're going to take all these punches. You're going to be punch drunk and you're just going to quit. It's a very thin line between quitting and pivoting, or quitting and going and doing something else. And that's why I go back to look really, really hard at the business model to make sure you're in the powerful model, because I believe you could take two entrepreneurs and put one in Model A and one in Model B, one Steve Jobs, one lives under a bridge. You know what I'm saying? Because some businesses and some industries are very, very brutal. Part of being smart in business is recognizing the model. But then at the same time, once you've made that decision, I do believe in burning the boat and only watering that one plant. It took me 13 years to get my construction company where it is. Well, really 11. The last 2 or 3 years have been really, really autopilot, just straight growth, money machine. And I always wanted real estate. And I owned real estate. I owned a commercial building, 2 single families, and a duplex. But in the last 5 months, I bought 160 doors. So I was studying real estate. Like I knew. Like I knew how it worked. And then I had real money to shove into it. They talk about make money, find a way to keep it, and then make it grow. And real estate is the OG of the subscription base.
You think it still is?
I do, especially if you're going to be an American. You could make money online, of course, but in real estate, I'm getting paid monthly at a profit. I'm depreciating the property against my taxes, not only against that property, but if there's any depreciation left over, I can put it against the income I make in the construction business or anywhere else. The rents are going to constantly go up. And a couple of years, I'm going to refinance out of the interest rate. So my cost of money is going to go down, which is going to make my cash flow even more. If you play it right with either 1031 exchanges or you pull loans against your equity in the property, you don't have to pay taxes. So I could sell a property, right? But then I know the capital gains, which would force me to use a 1031 exchange to buy a bigger property, like property. Or I could just borrow against it and die. They call it the buy, borrow, die method, and then trust it off to my kids where they don't have to pay taxes on it. All legal tax code, things that Trump doesn't want to share. There are major benefits to real estate. It's a real asset. They can't print an apartment building. For that reason, I think it's a hedge against inflation in a lot of ways. In fact, as the market inflates, so does rents. An asset that you own inflates in value, all while getting depreciated out. It's a really beautiful thing that they've set up, and a lot of governments do it. If anybody is interested in that, Tom Real Wright has a book called Tax-Free Wealth. It's a really, really good book. It's in the Rich Dad group of books, the whole Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki stuff.
Do you feel like it's something you need to have a bit of money behind you for you to go into?
You could raise it, or you could start small and build up. I was a guy that would watch Grant Cardone quite a bit, and I kind of agree with him on the whole, don't buy it unless it's 16 or more. The first apartment building, we bought 64 units. The next one, 21. This next one we're buying now is 60, and the one we're buying after that, we have it locked in an agreement, is another 40. So I got to get to counting. Might be more than 160. But the reason I like that, and the reason I believe that, is because I noticed when I was building metal buildings that the smaller buildings were actually harder to make money on, because it's all the startup and the getting the materials and getting checked into the hotel rooms and making sure the guys get acquainted to the panel types, and that we're doing it all the startup meetings and everything. But once they got going, we could really start clipping off some. The bigger the building, the better the profit was. And with these single family, like I had single family houses and I had a duplex. It was like, if a person moves out of one of those units in that duplex, I was making, let's say, $300 a month all year, and then I boom, quickly lose that whole profit. They could be in there all year and move out, and I'll lose them for 3 months, and all the profit would be gone because I'd be paying the mortgage, and nobody would be paying the mortgage plus a little bit of margin on top of it. But on the 64, if I got 5 people missing, we're still cash flowing. In that regard, I do think doing the bigger deal is better. And so for that reason, you'd either have to have your own money or you'd have to raise capital. I think anybody could do it. It would just take a lot of trust for somebody new to get money from someone and it not be yours. And I like putting money in my deals.